He dropped a Judgment Core on Stranded? If you've watched my channel for a bit, you might have seen the video where I talked about a player who's able to craft a Warden helmet on Stranded. Well, this guy's insanity hasn't stopped, and now he was able to be the first player ever to drop a Judgment Core on Stranded. Of course, with all this talk of dropping a Judgment Core, you're probably wondering how he was able to even kill a tier 4 Enderman. So let's get into it. But before that, if we're able to hit 100,000 subscribers before the end of the year, I'll do the one chip challenge, which if you don't know is a challenge where you eat this 2 million Scoville unit chip. So if you want to see that, subscribe. Okay, before we get into how tier 4s are killed, we're gonna have to do a little backstory on Stranded. When Stranded was released, people weren't immediately able to do Slayers because no one could really find a good way of killing them, considering most conventionally ways to kill them were impossible. However, after a bit of testing, players were able to find plenty of cheeses that made even the hardest Slayers painfully easy. For Revs and Svens, you could literally just get an Infinity Dirt wand and suffocate them by just placing the dirt blocks in their head. For Tarantulas, it was even easier. All you had to do was run away and stand near a wall, and they would literally jump in and suffocate themselves for you. But you might have noticed I didn't really say anything about Enderman Slayer. Well, the reason was because no one could find anything to cheese it. This is mainly due to the fact that Enderman can teleport, so any form of suffocation or drowning is basically useless because they'll just teleport away. So the only way to kill an Enderman Slayer would be to do it legitimately. Doesn't sound so bad, right? Well, you're wrong. On a normal profile, if you were to start doing Enderman Slayer, your weapon of choice would probably be something like a Voidwalker Katana, which is pretty cheap to craft, requiring only 16 Null Spheres. Then you'd probably upgrade to a Void Edge, and then to a Vorpal, and that would probably be good enough to do tier 4s with the appropriate gear. The problem is that both of those require Mithril, which even after months of being out is still not obtainable on Stranded. For this reason, it was thought for a pretty long time that Enderman Slayer was a lost cause and that it would never be possible. But somehow Lasphie stuck with it and was actually able to kill tier 4s. If you want a more in-depth explanation, I recommend watching Lasphie's video, but here's a quick rundown. First of all, for the gear, you'll need a Yeti sword. This is going to be the main DPS. Then, secondary, you're going to need a Prismarine blade. Most players don't know about this weapon considering it's quite useless in normal gameplay, but in Stranded it's really useful with sword swapping because it triples any damage if you're standing in water. And on Stranded, you can easily make sure there's water under you, giving you easy triple damage. Then, for gear, unsurprisingly, you need full Final Destination, and a Hurricane Bow for the hits phase. For healing, in an Ornate Zombie Sword and a Wand of Atonement should work, but since he already had one, he also used an Overflux. But I don't think you'd need it, but it's probably going to help. Finally, you could also use a Mana Steel Soul Whip to farm some mana during the hits phase. The only issue with that is that you can't really get a Soul Whip anymore because the spooky event is bugged on Stranded and not all the mobs spawn, so if you didn't have it when it was actually working, you can't really get it anymore, which is just normal Stranded gameplay. However, if you're actually able to gather all of this, you'll finally be able to kill tier 4s. The method and farm layout is pretty simple, and you can see what it's like to kill them from this gameplay. But one of the cool things is that due to how it's built, the boss can't spawn the beacons or the heads because there's just no space for them to do it. So it's actually a pretty chill fight to do. After finally mastering this, Lasphie proceeded to grind all the way up to level 7, and after only 10,000 XP, he was able to drop a handy Blood Chalice and a Judgment Core. Even though it's crazy that he dropped a Judgment Core, it's still ultimately useless, cause you need Mithril to actually craft a Terminator, and as I previously said, you can't get Mithril in this game, so it's impossible to craft a term. It's still crazy to me that he has this much dedication to Stranded, but huge props for him and all the work he's done in the game. Stranded has been kinda left out by the admins and no one really talks about it, or basically gives it any updates. So him actually doing this is kinda crazy. And before I end off the video, I just want to thank all the people who left a bunch of nice comments about how I look. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.